The business is hard. I think it's just one of the more difficult businesses that are out there with all the regulations, all the payer, medical policies and rules, and the demands of hospital discharges and need for speed. People come into our industry, come into our business from other industries and be like, I didn't think this would be this complicated. This is really crazier, more complex, more difficult than anything they've encountered.
What's uniquely challenging about running a family-influenced business?
Well, it's the family being involved. There was a lot of points on our journey where I did not know if the relationships were going to survive.
How did you know when it was time to kind of professionalize operations without losing that family feel?
Yeah, I have a long learning curve. So I think I arrived at that point a lot later than most people would have. And usually I think for us, it came from a place of crisis. I think that crisis came about when Medicare competitive bidding was the first part of that, and the price was really not stable any longer, and you were getting significant haircuts on price. We are not profit-centric. In order to drive maximum profitability, you have to aim at something different than profit. And so what we're aiming at is something that's purpose-centric. And we believe that we stay on purpose, profit will be a byproduct.
All right, we are live on the #1 DME podcast, Claim to Fame. Today we have a special guest, Casey Toomajian from Hometown Healthcare. Welcome to the show, Casey.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'm happy to be here. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Awesome. Well, Casey, for anyone who doesn't know who you are, we always kind of like to start off with giving you a chance to say a little bit about yourself and about your company.
Yeah, so I guess we are a upstate New York respiratory focused DME company. We have, 4 core product lines: CPAP, oxygen, ventilator. I guess sleep supplies would be another one of those. And we are 37 hometowners strong. Hometowners is the word we use to describe our employees. We're Hometown Healthcare. They're hometowners. We're all hometowners. And we kind of cover the eastern corridor of upstate New York. So we're kind of right there on the Vermont border. And we have about a 14 county range, family owned and operated. Yeah, that's kind of our high level today.
Awesome. Casey, take us back to, I believe the company was founded at around 2004. How did Hometown Healthcare actually look back then before 37 hometowners?
That's thanks for asking that question. So it actually was started, I gotta be careful too, by the way. I usually tell this story and I'm usually the hero in the story. And it became clear to me that I'm telling the story because I thought I was the hero in the story, and I realized that was really not quite true. So I've sort of retold the story differently, but it's very tempting for me to tell it as if I'm the hero. So just kind of help me. You'll see what I mean.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So actually, it was started by my grandfather in 1953. It was a pharmacy.
So not 2004. I was a bit off.
Well, sort of 2004. That's where the hero thing will come.
Got it. Okay, I'll be patient.
There's a story arc. We need to wait. Yeah.
That's right. So, Martin Toomajian and his partner Bill Maddox starts the Watervliet Pharmacy, community pharmacy in Watervliet, New York, about 10 miles north of Albany, the capital. And they just do that for years. Very well known in the community of Watervliet. My father and uncle, stepdad actually, and step uncle, both Toomajians, go to pharmacy school, take it over in the 80s, and then they continue to run it. And they had the foresight as national chain pharmacies were coming into town and prescription drugs, the reimbursement rates were getting squeezed. They had the foresight to get into medical equipment in the store front room, I should say. So they used to have like a glass menagerie section with all these little glass things. I remember seeing those as a kid. They had Russell Stover candy, a little card section. They had this whole section called beauty aids. And they're like, let's take some of this stuff out and we'll start doing some bath safety equipment or a lift chair. So they had that foresight to do that. And then I was in college when they made that decision. At the tail end of college, I went to SUNY Potsdam up by the Canadian border. It was frigid to go to school up there. And right out of college, I started working for this company called Maxim Healthcare Services, which was a company that really taught me how to sell in a healthcare setting and what that looked like. They really taught you to be brazen and just go into the ICU where it says don't go and just start talking to people to try to get some relationship established. So I left that in 2004 to start a referral source driven model, move it from the showroom and actually get people to order from us. And at that time, I didn't realize this. My father and uncle were kind of thinking about maybe getting out of the pharmacy game. They saw sort of a decline thing happening. And I think this was sort of a last ditch effort to just do something different and breathe some new life into the organization, the family business. But I remember for 2 months, April of 2004 to like end of May, early June 2004, I was just going to hospitals in a suit and hitting the top floor of the elevator and just walking the halls, trying to get someone to describe for me what a good DME company does and how do I be that for you. And I didn't realize I was doing this at the time. I was doing sort of a voice of customer kind of thing. And 2 months went by and nothing. We had a dedicated new phone set up in the pharmacy, and so it was a direct channel, and it wasn't ringing. And I was thinking, I'm going to be the one that's known for taking down the family business because I'm doing work. And I was freaking out. I remember my dad said to me, he said, it feels like the calm before the storm. And I remember thinking, oh, God, I hope you're right, because if this storm doesn't come, this is just going to be super embarrassing for me. And then that phone rang. It was like early June of 2004, and the phone rang. It was like everything started moving in slow motion. I ran over to it, and I said, thank you for calling Hometown Healthcare. This is Casey. How can I help you? And this woman at the other end said, hey, Casey, this is Deb Lewis. I'm from St. Peter's Hospital. I'm on the 6th floor. We need a pair of Loft-Strand crutches. You said you'd get in here within the hour. I need them here within the hour. Can you do it? And I said, oh my gosh, yes, I can. Thank you, Dad, for calling me. I'm so excited. I'll be there. I jumped in my Volkswagen. I'm sorry, before I did that, I looked to the person after I hung up. I said, what are Loft-Strand crutches? And the lady next to me, the woman that was kind of there, she's like, they're forearm crutches, and I think we have a pair in the basement. We sure enough did. She quickly taught me how to fit them. I zipped down there in my black Volkswagen Jetta, ran there, and got up there with like a half hour. I didn't care about getting anything signed. I just gave them over. And she's like, oh my gosh, you were here quick. Let me introduce you to this other case manager. And that became kind of a catalyst. See, already I've told this as if I'm the hero of the story. I'm not. But that became like a catalyst where we started to become the company known for getting medical equipment to the hospital within the hour. We started to be known as that, and it just grew from there. And very quickly realized that you can't really scale that model well. Fast forward a few more years, my brother, Aram, he comes on, and he is one of the real heroes of the story because we left him on my own. It was not a stable operation. It was chaos city, and it was just, true startup. And we needed someone to help stabilize. And that's where Aram really provided a ton of value in bringing a systematic approach to the business. And then my dad and uncle sell the pharmacy. Years later, we bought the DME business. So today, Aram and I are 50-50 owners, and we have narrowed our product or created real focus around this respiratory arena. And so that's the long version.
That's awesome. That's a cool story.
That's a great story. We'll deliver within 30 minutes.
We can't even qualify within 30 minutes. I guess qualifications happen. But
unless you're
but not
no
that
delivery ticket, no anything, just
drop everything and go.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's awesome. So it sounds like obviously there was a lot of, difficulty at the beginning, as any company is when you're, getting started. I guess what was like really harder than what you expected about building this HME DME business?
Yeah, the business is hard. I mean, I think it's just one of the more difficult businesses that are out there with all the regulations, all the payer medical policies and rules, and the demands of hospital discharges and need for speed. So I think it's one of the more difficult. We've had people come into our business from other industries and be like, I didn't think this would be this complicated. This is really crazier, more complex, more difficult than anything they've encountered. And these aren't like softball industries, the banking industry and tech industry. So believe it or not, though, one of the things I think was bothering me early on is that we would grow and we'd bring more people in, and whatever it was about where we were at that point in time, we saw quality start to dip the more people we brought in. And one of the things we did not do a good job of, I think, is creating sort of what we call a shared conscience or a organizational conscience. So how does, if something bugs me that needs to be solved, does it bug everybody else that works for me in the same way? If there's a patient that's left under supported, is that going to bother me to the point where, like it does, is that going to bother the people that work for me as well? So they're motivated to do something about it. And so we realized we really need to figure out a way to develop a sustained organizational conscience so that as we got bigger, quality didn't suffer. We got better as we got bigger. And there was a whole, and it's still to this day, you have to fight for that every single day. But, I think that idea was born from a place of just being, we just realizing that people don't have a natural ownership mindedness, or the founder's ownership mindedness, and you have to kind of teach that and really curate that intentionally.
Absolutely. Was there any moments early on where you questioned whether you made the right call to start this entire business?
Yeah, I think when you start, you realize you've got someone that is leaving your company, and you're going to be going back to the warehouse to clean dirty equipment and get it patient ready again. And you thought that was behind you. That's happened over and over and over. That's not work that's beneath me, but you're like, man, I thought we were farther along. And you aren't. You haven't created something that was really anti-fragile. You've created something that, you've still got you're one, card in a house of cards away from jumping in that truck and doing deliveries, or, going out and answering that phones first on phones, or you're cleaning that medical equipment. And I think the realization that you think you should be out of that situation and you're not, that can cause you to really question whether or not it was the right move. But it's all about expectations, but that pain causes you to want to develop a scalable system. And so without that, I don't think you're as invested in doing what it takes to really create something that's anti-fragile and not so easy to fail.
I guess that kind of leads me to my next question. How did you know when it was time to kind of professionalize operations without losing that family feel?
Yeah, I have a long learning curve. So I think I arrived at that point a lot later than most people would have. And usually, I think for us, it came from a place of crisis. And I think that crisis came about when Medicare competitive bidding was the first part of that, and the price was really not stable any longer, and you were getting significant haircuts on price, and multiple turnarounds that happened when turnaround situations were created where you went from being like, oh, we know what we're doing financially, to, oh my gosh, if we don't change something, we're going to lose $500,000 this year. And so I think that is part of what I've joked, because we've been through like 3 or 4 turnarounds, and my wife thinks I'm a bad business owner because of how many turnarounds I've been through. I'm like, no, this industry is different. Believe me, I'm not unskilled. I think it's the industry, and she doesn't buy it. But anyway, the need to, I think the need to get profitable first when you're going to a place where you're not going to be was the first part. But that actually introduced us to this idea that the more you could focus on designing a system of work, an elegant system of work where everybody's engaged, that works for you in that common system, and it works together well, and you actually create a place that people want to work. So it started out as survival, and then it became something sort of serendipitously discovered that this is sort of the silver bullet to creating an engaged workforce, is creating a system of work that's not pushed onto people, but is one where you're drawing up for them as the smartest people closest to the work, how this work should be designed, and how do we create a way to get better with that work process over time.
Casey, so early on you mentioned kind of the thought of, if a patient's underserved, some of those nuances, and how do you keep moving forward with hiring employees, and, with the fact that someone might be underserved. So how do you guys kind of balance like the compassion with kind of what you just mentioned, creating something that's high performing in a business like this?
Yeah. So one of our principles here at Hometown is that we are not profit centric, that we're actually, in order to drive maximum profitability, you have to aim at something different than profit. And so what we're aiming at is something that's purpose centric. And we believe that we stay on purpose, profit will be a byproduct. And it does seem like there's some magic in that, but it's counterintuitive. It's like a counter steering thing on a motorcycle. you want to turn left to go right. I rode a motorcycle like a couple times in my life, and I found out the hard way. You don't actually turn the wheel to the right to go right. You counter steer. It was scary because I almost crashed the thing. I did not, but I think it's true here as well. And so one of the things we had to do was really understand that what was our core ideology. What were those things that were true that kind of weren't going to change about us? They were sort of core principles that we never wanted to change, no matter what changed around us. So no matter what management fads would come and go, or technology breakthroughs would come and go, or competitive threats or regulatory pressures, these things would not change. And how do we figure out how to articulate into some reason we exist beyond making money? Because everybody's got to make money to retain people and invest in the business and give the shareholders a return on their investment. But beyond making money, what are the reasons we exist, and how do we explain that in a way to develop a shared conscience? And we found that getting that articulated, not just articulated though, but actually being able to connect that grandiose idea with the daily activities of the operation has really enabled the highest profitability we've ever seen. But we weren't setting out to do that. So I think that's been a kind of a huge learning. And it wasn't how do you balance this intention? It was like, let's just go, you have to be smart. You can't be stupid about how you manage your money, but let's go fully in this direction. Even though it may not make sense short-term profitability wise, let's lean into this core purpose. And then we found that the financial stuff works itself out.
I love that. That's awesome.
Great. Casey, you probably, I think you mentioned this already, but employees are such a big part of what you do, and everyone needs to be happy and needs to know what they're doing, and there's a lot to it. What would you say like your employees kind of taught you about leadership over the years?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's a great question. What did my employees teach me about leadership? I mean, long time ago, one of my mentors told me there was a few different keys to developing as a leader. And one was to take in as much as you could in terms of books or podcasts. I don't think podcasts were around then, but just books. And then the other one was to make sure you're in the leadership laboratory as much as possible. So you're not just an academic, you're a practitioner dealing with that. So without the employees, I have no leadership laboratory from which to understand what's working, what's not working. One of the things I learned early on was, even though I believe as a founder or a pseudo founder, because my father and uncle made the money investment, I just kind of provided some of the sweat equity. I had strong views about methods. So I was like, this method is what works. We're going to do it this way. And I was very dogmatic with methods, and as opposed to understanding, so to answer your question, when you try to be dominant on methods with people that have their own ideas and their own creativities and their own personality styles and leadership styles themselves, if you're dogmatic with that, you're gonna be surrounded by people that are either yes people and just do what you say, or they're gonna just leave because they're just so frustrated that you're trying to be that micromanaging. Mm-hmm. So I think one of the biggest things I learned from them is be clear about what your principles are, but don't espouse specific methods, top down. Let them tell you what that method should be from a place of really strong principles being articulated.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
We talk to obviously a lot of DME providers, and there's a fair amount of them that are family-run businesses that, maybe have an origin story similar to yours. Plenty have started out of garages. What's uniquely challenging about running a family-influenced business?
Well, it's the family being involved. And I say that tongue-in-cheek, but there was a lot of points on our journey where I did not know if the relationships were going to survive, to the point where there was points at which we were almost willing to walk away because the relationship had gotten so bad that we just were like, let's prioritize the relationship and just, take this business thing on. You've got, as family members, what do they say? Familiarity breeds contempt. The more familiar you are with someone, the harder it is to influence them. It's true, at least with my own wife. That's true with my brother. It's true both. It's just a trickier thing to influence them. And so deference is not going to happen just because you happen to be the CEO and your brother has the COO title. Deference is not just going to happen. It may look like that on an org chart on paper, but what happens in practice is not that in terms of how decisions are made. So I could not get out of this "you need to defer to me" mindset. Again, long learning curve. No matter how much I just, kind of having been here prior to my brother, I felt like he owed it to me to defer to me. But thank God he's a strong personality and he's a leader himself and just didn't do that. Because if he did defer to me where I thought he ought to, I don't know if this business would be around any longer. And so over time, probably from a place of just wanting to make this work out and not wanting to be in conflict perpetually with my brother, just realizing I need to listen to him. And the more I listen to him, because he's so gifted, the more he's refining my thoughts, the more I'm refining his thoughts, and we're working together. But for a long time, I didn't want to be a partnership. I felt like I was supposed to be the man, the hero of the story, and he didn't co-sign that. Thank God.
Yeah, no, it's tough working with families. I mean, there's so many kind of like dynamics, right, at play.
Yeah.
How do you kind of separate those out? It's got to be tough, because at the end of the day, yeah, like you said, on an org chart, it says this is how it's supposed to be,
Yeah.
but you're very comfortable with each other when behind closed doors or after the shop is closed and you go home.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do I separate out those dynamics? I think there's been a few things that have had to come about to do that. One is I had to personally start to, and this was a fake it till you make it thing. I had to personally start to drain the emotional content from an idea I had. I'm an ideas person, and I had to, I want to bounce these off my partner, my brother. He is on the spectrum of agreeableness. He's he's the least agreeable person I've ever met in my entire life. His default is I'm going to disagree with you because he's a critical thinker and he wants to make sure the idea has been purified and isn't just. And I'm the opposite. I'm the most agreeable person. So I had to come to the table with draining the emotional content. Emotionally, do not allow myself to be invested in this idea, and probably think about it a little bit before I bring it to him. So that was one dynamic thing that had to happen. The other thing that had to happen was he and I can quickly get misaligned. So a few years ago, I decided or redecided, I can't remember who decided, I call him pretty much every day at 7:30, between 7:30 and 8 a.m. And we talk about what is on our minds that day, every single day. That created a little bit of a habit that proactively allowed us to not get too far apart in what we're thinking about in alignment. So historically, before we had done that, I would have been thinking of an idea for maybe a few weeks and then drop this thing on him, and it's like out of left field. He's not. So now it creates space for these mini micro alignments to happen along the way, and we never get too far apart. So I think those are the two things: drain the emotional content and micro align all the time.
Got it. Love it. What advice would you give to second generation leaders stepping into the ownership roles? Because there are a lot of, like I said, family businesses in DME, as you know, that get handed down or have, the second generation coming in and the third and the fourth, and that will keep happening. But any words of wisdom, I think our community and followers would love.
Yeah, my son is about to turn. Well, he's 18. He's about to go to college. I'm already thinking about how could this happen in a way that enables his success, but also the business success, but also relationship success, which is something you want to make sure you're keeping in view at all times when you have these family businesses. So my grandfather was a founder, handed it over to two pharmacists as a second generation, and they just kept it going as a pharmacist. And then there was a sort of a new birth business happening for me and my brother. So that startup mentality, that thing, causes you to be in an arena, a battle arena, that battle tests you. And it makes you an incredibly versatile problem solver because there is nobody else that can help get you out of a situation where you need to solve this problem. So I think the danger in the generations that don't have that battle testedness, that arena mindset, they're insulated to some degree. They're in a bubble to some degree, is that they don't ever learn how to be battle tested because they haven't been in that real situation. I don't know how to do this, but the theory would be, how do you create a arena-like situation for this party when there really isn't one organically, naturally? How do you actually mimic one as much as possible so you can achieve readiness in that next generation that isn't in an actual, and I don't know how to do it, but that is the trick. That
That's
whoever
the
figures out,
mindset or the thought.
yeah.
I feel like it's like one of those things where you kind of just have to be in it to experience it, right? Like you don't
Yeah.
really truly know the business, or you really can't understand the dynamics that are at play unless you're really in there from the ground up. And like, you know, you're a kid and you're kind of like observing around, seeing what everyone's doing. You know, you're taking out the garbage if they need to, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And like truly learning the business from the ground up. So then when it's time for succession, you're prepared, right?
Yeah, there's a local grocery store up here that is known for this thing that they do to try to mimic that real life battle ready, you know, arena. They make the family member go work for another company. Then the rule is you have to have been promoted. Like you can't, you're not even gonna look, we're not even gonna talk to you unless you figure out a way to get promoted. So that's a way to mimic that. And then when they come back, they're working as a bagger for the first 6 months to a year. And that's
Right.
their job. And they need to work that job and be good at it before they get another opportunity. So something like that where
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my buddy growing up, he had they have a very large family business, and his mom did the same thing. She said you can't work here until you work somewhere else, and it should be at a competitor, and you should learn as much as you possibly can about that company as possible, and then
Yeah.
bring that information over, and then you start from the bottom. So it's pretty similar,
Yeah.
I guess, as a tried and true concept for family succession.
yes.
There's
Yeah,
definitely something to it.
Probably would mechanistically not ever allow my son to report to me, right? So probably some direct, never let that happen. That never let that dynamic be in play would be another, just to save the relationship or protect the
For
relationship.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure, because at the end of the day, that's more important than in the business
Yeah.
is make sure that family's intact. Casey, when you're thinking about the next 5 to 10 years or so
Yeah.
with hometown healthcare, what do you think matters most? Where do you see this going?
Yeah, so this, for a long time, this actually was a point of conflict, I think. Not crazy, but a point of conflict for my brother and I is I was watching all of my peers, really good buddies of mine in the industry, and they'd already done so many acquisitions, and they were growing through scale, and we've never done that. We've never purchased an organization. We've not been bought, and I wanted to get big. I wanted that. That's what everybody else is doing. That's cool, and I was like, I want to do that. And another area where my brother just did not defer, thank God, he would always say things like, we need to focus on mastery. And if we can focus on mastery, maybe that stuff will come eventually, but let's not focus on getting bigger first. Let's focus on mastery. And so he wouldn't say it exactly that way, but that was basically what he was telling me. And we have really defined a strategic direction where we want to prove to the healthcare world that we can transform respiratory patient outcomes. And so we're dealing with patients that are suffocating, and that's what they're doing. If they have COPD, they're suffocating all the time. If they have sleep apnea, they're suffocating while they sleep. And we believe we can create a business that reduces that suffocation, that restores their hope, and really that flattens their curve of clinical decline if we can develop these disease management programs that improve and extend patient life. And so what we're aiming at, kind of, I guess, ideologically, is to build those programs that do that. So we believe the COPD patient, because of how much they're utilizing hospital services, if we can do that well, we could save COPD exacerbation-related hospitalizations to the tune of like $100 million a year. We believe that that's possible with how much they're costing the system now. And we believe on the sleep apnea side that there are a lot of patients out there that just fall off therapy. It's like a 5K. They run the 5K. Someone that maybe just is trying to do something good for their life, they run a 5K, they get it done, and then once they achieve that 5K, they go back to sitting on the couch and never exercising a day in their life. We think sleep apnea therapy is like that. There's that trial period, they achieve it, and then they fall off therapy a year in, and there's a ton of fall-off after. So we want to create enduring sleep champions that endure the therapy. It's a lifetime condition. We want to create a situation where we're able to, through impacting the quality of life or the disease, slowing the disease progression down for the COPD patient, we're able to monetize significant savings for the healthcare system. So that's kind of what we're thinking. Yeah.
Awesome. I got one more question for you
Yeah.
before we head into our rapid fire section, which is it's the fun part. But what does success look like to you now compared to when you first got into the business?
Yeah. Wow. So I think when we first got into the business, success looked like another hospital case manager was willing to let us bring them a walker and a handheld reacher to them at 1 o'clock in the afternoon within the hour. And it was like, oh my gosh, another case manager is willing to give us this opportunity. And at this hospital, we haven't been to this hospital yet. That was really like how I was getting excited or energized. I think the success here, we let's see, that's a good question. What would success look like here? So some of this is anecdotal. You hear about, and one of the things we try to tell back to our staff is these stories of people's lives changing and how we've interrupted their lives. So we hear a ton of stories. We try to gather stories of patients that were, not able to breathe and not having quality of life, and now they have a lightweight portable option for oxygen, or they have all this symptomatic relief from using the CPAP that they didn't have before because we pushed and persevered with them, or it's a ventilator patient that had all this work of breathing, and just for whatever reason, it's very hard to get a patient on a ventilator these days, but we finally figured out a way to navigate that, get them out, and they have this on for the very first time, and they fall asleep in the chair because they were so tired from just trying to breathe. They couldn't fall asleep, and they just fall asleep in the chair. Those kind of anecdotes, I think, are the types of things that give us chills about you're going the right direction. This is the kind of thing you're doing, those type of anecdotes. It's not something I can show through data necessarily, although we do need to tell a data story to a health plan if we are reducing hospitalizations. But I think those are the types of things that I look for in hearing stories to know if we're in the right direction.
For sure. Yeah, I can totally resonate with that because at the end of the day, throughout all of this, there's patients at the end. So I could see how, especially, for the DMEs that are the boots on the ground, how impactful that is. And just hearing things like, I know even in EcoHealth, different, but we use Slack. It's like an internal chat tool, and we have like team shout outs, right? Where they can share like success of our DME providers. And like, there's data around that. Yeah, they're a customer, but when you just share like kind words or the actual impact, it really is like a motivation that is like different than like monetary or things like that. So I really resonate with that because when I see them pop up, I get super pumped because there's these great things happening. And when you put light on it, it can really motivate a lot of people and make you feel good about the work you're doing. Yeah.
To that point too, Wayne, the anecdotes come from employees as well. When we I've heard before, I think the Gallup does this survey where they say that whoever your direct manager is has more of an impact on your health than your primary care physician does. That the manager is key, and creating a place that people love to work is about getting that manager role filled with someone who's really gifted at doing management. And so hearing anecdotes around employees that describe Hometown as a place they love working is another great thing that I would say defines success for us. Have we nurtured a place where they can realize their full potential, that they love coming to work, is the question.
That's amazing.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, thank you for all this episode. I feel like got deeper than a lot of them, like more personal, which I think was amazing. Like it's
For
like
sure.
real life stuff. That,
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah, for sure. All the episodes are great, but I feel like the family stuff, like it's all. I'm the oldest of two brothers. Like it just kind of like made me start thinking. But no, it's awesome, man. Thank you so much for sharing. We got one easy, fun segment left called Rapid Fire, so
Awesome.
we'll let Alex do it. He's a pro at it.
Great.
And we'll take
All
it
right,
from
we'll,
here.
we'll have a good time. All right. Yeah. So it's just a this or that kind of thing. So we'll get started if you're ready.
I'm ready.
All right. Cool. Coffee or energy drinks?
Coffee.
Early mornings or late nights?
Early mornings for sure.
Hire slow or move fast?
Hire so super slow. Like slow. Yeah.
Texting or calling?
I'm a call guy.
Road trip or flying?
Road trip with the right people.
Nice answer. Pizza or tacos?
Tacos.
Big family gathering or quiet night in? This is
Big family
relevant.
gathering.
There you go. Every day is a big family gathering for you.
Yes. That's right.
Awesome. Well, Casey, thanks so much for joining the show today. We really appreciate your time. This is a really fun and unique episode, like Wayne said. And if anyone wants to contact you or find out more information about what you do, what's the best way for someone to do that?
Probably email me, casey.toomajian@hthcny.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining. This is a really good time. Hopefully we can have you back.
Thanks, guys. It's been an honor. It was awesome. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Casey.